All right, here we are now. Part 2, the demos for monograms and assignment 3. So first of all, again, there's going to be some demonstrations and some a lot more information on this in the pre-recorded session. So I greatly recommend that you listen to that, watch that before you get started on your assignment, because it's going to give you some good ideas and some tips and things in there. Okay, first, let's take a look at what the assignment entails here. So you're going to create a wedding invitation. We decided to do a wedding invitation just because, again, this is something that is very likely that you're going to be asked to do. Maybe not as a career, but as a side thing. You know, most, if you're a graphic designer, people find out about it. You will probably have friends, relatives, anybody, a friend of a friend, whatever, that is going to have a wedding or any other kind of party. I mean, these kind of principles could apply to any type of event. But very often, you know, a wedding invitation is something that, you know, costs money. Everybody wants to kind of try to save money when it comes to wedding, and pretty sure you're going to get hit up by somebody to see if you would create their invitation. All right. So this is something that you can definitely apply to that. And if this turns out great, you could probably even put it in your portfolio. So it's also, oh, excuse me. It's also a really good exercise in practicing techniques to create hierarchy in text. Excuse me. And it's also a good practice in, again, finding fonts that have a certain look and style to them and combining fonts. Because if we go back to the designs that we saw here, you'll see that most of them are combining one or two different fonts, right? This one here seems like it's kind of using the same one. This, it's using a very scripty font, right? And then something that's kind of classic for some of the smaller information. Yeah, pretty much all of them that you look at is going to have some different kind of combination of fonts. Here, these guys have used just like lowercase for the names and all caps for the other information. That's big contrast, okay? So combining fonts is an important technique when it comes to creating interest in a typographically based design. So there's some information about that in here. We're going to talk about these different things. Again, techniques that you can use to create hierarchy, using contrast in text size, font families, and style, using different alignments, creating specific line breaks to separate content, and grouping lines by using different spacing and adding color. And so you are going to be given, and then again, combining fonts. Again, there's a lot about that in that pre-recorded lecture that I'm just going to refer to that so that you can go over it in there. But for the prompt of this assignment, you are given 4 different scenarios and you choose one. Each one of them has a document with the information in it that you download so that it has the place and the date and the time and all of that kind of stuff. So for our example, why don't you guys help pick one of these different couples? They're just briefly explained right here. There's Tyler and Marianne, who are having an extravagant formal winter wedding in New York City. Paul and Joan, who's having a traditional family wedding at their parents' country club. And Carlos and Olivia are having a destination wedding in the Caribbean. Sean and Harley have a summer wedding, a casual summer wedding on a ranch in Montana. So very different. They're all weddings, but they're very different atmospheres and styles. Okay. So, all right. Tab put up number 3. So we're going to pick Carlos and Olivia. And so depending on which one you want to do, or if you just want to check out all 4 of them and then decide, that's fine. But in the interest of time, we're just going to download the information about Carlos and Olivia and open up that document. Okay, so here is your information. Carlos Mendez, Olivia Longhorn. So now we have their last names as well. And it explains that it's a relaxed destination wedding on a beach in the Caribbean. And this is the copy. I will allow, it says that it cannot be altered except to remove unneeded punctuation, but I will allow you to make a few changes, okay? So again, privilege for those who are watching the live session or the recording. If you want to use a number instead of the spelling of these dates, right? The 7th or the year, you can use numbers instead. And also for the time, if you want to do that, if you want to put 6:30 instead, and if you want to put digits 2017, or if you want to change that to 19 so that it feels a little bit more current, you're fine. That's okay as well. And you can put the number 7 instead of spelling that out if you want to. Up to you. A lot of formal invitations, you'll probably see that when you are going through doing your research, actually spell out dates and times. But it's becoming a lot more common that people use digits as well. And I think digits kind of break up that monotony of letter forms. And so you can do a lot of interesting design things with digits. So that's why I think it's fine if you guys want to do that. All right? But keep in mind, don't copy this part. Don't copy this. All of the information that you have is right here. If you want to put in Olivia Longhorn and Carlos Mendez, again, if you want to put Olivia and Carlos, you can do that. But don't put like relaxed destination on a wedding in a beach in Caribbean. Nobody would put that on their invitation, right? Think about the text that you're putting on there and make sure that it's like looking real. You also don't want to put, this is a fictional resort, but feel free to look up this and Anguilla to get a good feel of the environment, right? You don't want to put that on the invitation, okay? I know it seems like a given, but I have gotten lots of submissions where they have put all of this text on the thing. Yeah, this is a bay, and it should have an apostrophe there, I guess. You can actually Google this, Mondays Bay and Anguilla and the place, and see what it looks like if you're interested, okay? So the resort is fictional, but the place is not. And that's kind of the same in a lot of these examples, that some of it's fictional, but the place is usually real. Yeah, it says that it's an error right here, but I don't know why. Maybe it wants me to say Monday, and it's just like this name is not in spell check, right? Just like this isn't and this isn't. So, yeah, but you know, do a little research, take a look at these places, what they're like, and to help get a good feel for things. Okay. So once you've chosen the couple that you're going to do the invitation for, you are going to bring out the feeling of the event by your use of fonts, hierarchy, alignment, color, and remember that your skill, how you do this, is going to determine how the guests see the event and what they will expect. Again, if we look back at a lot of these different ones, you will probably expect a different type of wedding if you get an invitation like this. Oh, that's a stock photo one, right? Let's say you get an invitation like this, or you get an invitation like this. You're probably expecting a different type of event, right? This one here feels pretty casual. You might even come in, you know, your just some nice clothes or whatever. Okay, very casual. This one, on the other hand, you will probably expect something more formal, right? So it's going to be up to you how this event is relayed. All right. You can have just a solid background color. Let's take a look at the benchmarks. Okay, here's one. This is an example of Carlos and Olivia's. Okay, we have a monogram here that you're going to create. And the information. Notice there's just two fonts used, one scripty one and one all caps one. That's a good way to have good contrast with your fonts. A loose scripty one and a more formal one in all caps. Okay, here you can see there's some background color, some color in the text, but that's it. Yep, we're gonna just keep no illustrations, no flourishes, no nothing like that, okay? Next sample. Okay, different style, different look. Here's the monogram. Again, notice the combination of fonts, one serif and one sans serif. This is a slab serif and a sans serif, but only two fonts are being used and they contrast nicely. But it's a little bit more casual idea. And look, they kind of created a border right here with the monogram. So this border is actually created with type. Kind of cool, right? But there is like a little line up here to kind of balance things out, stuff like that. Okay. All right, does that clarify things, Amanda? All right, let's get cooking. Make sure you follow the instructions right here. We're going to go over them when we do the demonstration. The size, you can only use type. Use the 5 listed techniques. I'll be going over those. Combination of 2 fonts. Just use 2. Simple lines, include a monogram. Colors is allowed. And then you're going to save your native file. You can do it in InDesign or Illustrator, up to you. And then a PDF, and the PDF is what you're going to submit. Nope, I'm going to demonstrate it right now. Thursdays for the assessment. Okay, so first of all, let's talk a little bit about monograms, because you're going to create a monogram for this. And whoops, what I talk about when I talk about monogram math, again, this is also covered in the pre-recorded lecture, but monogram math is 1 + 1 = 1. And that's the whole goal with a monogram, is that you take 2 different letters, but the way that they are connected or put by each other, they create one new element or symbol. Okay? So again, you have to go through kind of a process to choose things for a monogram. Again, there's a demo of that in the pre-recorded lecture. I don't know how much I'll be able to go through here in class. But again, you want to think about your font choice again and the mood. How do the specific letters look that you're going to use? You know, what in our case, what are the C's look like? What do the O's look like, right? So you want to go into Typekit again, type out those two letters so that you know what they look like. Check out several different options and play around with them and see which one you like at the end. Again, think of the letters as shapes, just like you did with the portrait. I would go through the same process that you did in assignment 1 when you created that portrait, about creating outlines so that you can move the letters and you can overlap them and things like that, not just type them out right by each other. How can you make 2 or 3 letters? And you can use 3 letters if you want to. You can use the last name, the initial for the last name as well if you'd like. How can you make it feel like an icon or like a new symbol? And proximity, alignment, continuation, negative, space, and Gestalt theory, all of these principles apply. And again, those are things that probably talked about in DS109. I'll even put up some links to some of those lectures about that in the announcements. So that might seem kind of complicated, but there are some quick and easy ways to do this. And again, I go over that in the pre-recorded session. All right, so starting on creating an invitation, you're going to go through the steps, choose a client, research some moods and styles, think about what that type of wedding is going to be like, use Illustrator or InDesign, it's up to you. Follow the specs, remember you can use color, and include that monogram. Now, this is the way that I would approach it if I were you. You can create the monogram after you've done the design, but I would do it first, because in many ways, that monogram can, which one will have better quality? If you create it first or after? Is that what you're wondering about, Amanda? Oh, Illustrator. Oh, it will have the same quality. It can be vector-based either way. You don't want to use Photoshop. You want to use, it's just a matter of kind of manipulating and moving things. If you want to outline your fonts and move them around, it's usually Illustrator is a little easier to do that. But again, InDesign has, you know, a little bit more margin things and stuff like that for you that you might have to put up guides in Illustrator. I'm probably going to do this in Illustrator. I'm going to do this in Illustrator for my demonstration, just because we're using InDesign for all of our more body copy and text type things like that. And anytime that you're only doing one page of something, Illustrator works fine. And you don't really need to do paragraph styles and things like that either for this. Okay, quality-wise, it will be the same. All right, so creating the monogram first, I think is helpful because, for example, if we look at this benchmark, this example right here, notice that this is the font used in the monogram, and then the same font as being used in the text. So that kind of uses the principle of repetition, right? So that it connects the monogram to the rest of the text in invitation. And so, you know, I think that's kind of a good way to get started. Yeah, they kind of do look like flamingos, you're right. All right, so when you create the monogram, you will probably have the more interesting or the more you know, ornamental font in the monogram, but maybe not. Actually, if we go back here and look at the other one, this one is using the more simpler font for the monogram, and then it has another font that's a little scriptier for part of the text, including the names of the couples so that it kind of stands out. But you want to choose a complementary or a secondary font for the text. You want to have a simpler text font for the smaller text, so that's easy to read. And then if you have a more interesting or flourishy font, you want to use that for larger things like the monogram or the names of the couple, things like that. Yeah, I think a monogram does help kind of structure the invite and give it a feel. Then you're going to choose an alignment. It will help you with an alignment for the text and for the composition. And you want to use some spacing, size, and contrast to create hierarchy and add color appropriately. All right, let's get started here. I've got a lot of slides with tips for you, but you can get those in the PDF when I upload it with the recording. Are you guys using those PDFs? Are you guys looking at those at all? Do you save those? Okay, good. I'm glad you're using that because that kind of keeps you from having to do notes. All right, so let's get going. We'll start where am I? Where's the assignment? Do I have two browsers open? Let's go back home. I need those specs. We need to follow the directions. Okay, you want to do an A7 size. It's 4.75 by 6.75. So you can put in, sometimes you can find an A7, but we can also just put in the 4.75, oops, not comma, 4.75, 6.75. This is a pretty common invitation size. You can decide if you want it to be portrait or landscape. Just like the examples, you saw that one was portrait and one was landscape, right? I don't know why I have two of these. Oh, well. Okay, so we'll just start with our blank page, and we're going to start, let's start making a monogram, and we'll probably do one kind of quick here, just in the interest of time. So we have the letters O and C, right? So I'm just going to do O and C, okay? And then I'm going to select these, and I'm going to go up to our character, and I'm going to take a look at some fonts. Find more. And see here, they actually have a lot of them that, this is actually a way that you can actually go and access all of those fonts here without having to go to the website. And look, it even has the preview of the text that I'm looking at. All right, so it's a beachy wedding, kind of classy, and let's see, and relaxed. Let me do this one, okay? I'm gonna do that one. What's it called? Acme Gothic Extra Wide. Okay. All right, so here they are, and I'm gonna go to Type, Create Outlines, and then I'm gonna ungroup them. And then I have two different, let's see, actually what's their, let's do an example with 3. Okay, let's say that they choose the last name of Mendez. They can choose either last name. I actually have, my son took my daughter-in-law's last name rather than keeping his. So it's up to what you want to do here. But we'll just do this just because I think an M is going to be a good, it's going to be a good shape to work with this. All right. So now I have 3 letters. I'm definitely going to make them a little bit bigger and play around with them and see how we can make these letters kind of connect and feel like one shape. Okay. And I just kind of had this in mind. You can see kind of how this almost becomes like 2 little eyeballs and a face here. But this just overlapping the M and having the M combine the 2 initials makes this feel like one new symbol, right? So instead of having them just lined up like this, if I just typed it out, right? If I just use this type and I put OCM, okay, that feels, that feels a little bit boring. It's just kind of like the 3 letters. But if I take them and I kind of look at the shapes and see, I could do like this if I wanted to. Even put this underneath it. That's one way to do it. But I kind of liked the whole idea of kind of having this M connect those 2 circles right there. But I want to, I want to make sure these are lined up. I want like this point of the M to kind of land in the same spot, both in the O and in the C, so it feels balanced. Okay, so that was a pretty quick way to create a monogram. Okay, if I was doing this, then I would group them together, Command G, so that they're now a group together. If I was doing this for an actual client, I would probably play around and test a few other options as well. So this might not be the best option, but we're just kind of going with this for the demonstration, okay? Then I'm going to do, then I'm going to take my text, copy this text back into Illustrator and paste the text right here. Whoops, that was just a long one. Now, if you just put the text type tool there and do copy, it's going to give you everything in one long line, and then you have to go in and make all kinds of line breaks. So maybe create a text box instead, kind of give you a place for it, and then we will paste this text in here. Now it's in that same font. We want to use 2 fonts. You can, if you want to, use 2 different styles of the same font. So this is the light version right here, right? I could have used regular semi-bold or black for the monogram. I probably wouldn't want to use that for the text itself though, right? But if you want to, you could use like bold as one of your fonts and then regular or light for the other one. That's fine. It doesn't have to be 2 actual fonts, but we're going to use 2 fonts for this style. So we have one that's kind of contemporary. It kind of has thicks and thins. So it's kind of a mix between a serif and a sans serif, but it doesn't really have serifs. So I think just a very simple serif font is going to be my best combination for this. So I'm going to filter it to just the serif fonts, and then, sans serif fonts, pardon me. And then find something that I feel is pretty nice to go with it. And some of our classic ones are always good ones to keep as the supporting role, again, because they're not very loud or boisterous, and they kind of play a good supporting role. So how about Gill Sans, one of our classics? Let's pick that here then. I don't know why you didn't apply it. Okay. All right. So now that we're looking at this text here, This is not really the nicest way to read all of this information. If you get an invitation that looks like this, what you're seeing here is basically just a long sentence. You'd have to read all of it. It's going to be hard for you to find out who are the people getting married, when is it, all of that kind of stuff. So I would say your first step, and I've kind of listed 5 different ways that you should apply to your invitation to create the hierarchy and organize the text. First, I would go in and do the line breaks. Then I would make sure that, you know, thinking about the contrasting fonts that you might want to use and the different sizes and the spacing and the color. Okay, so we're going to kind of go through this text in these 5 steps. Okay, so first of all, let's create some line breaks. And this is a time when it's important that you kind of read through and think about what this information is about. Yeah, it does kind of look like a frog face. I'm not so sure if I love it now that I look at it, but hopefully you guys get the idea there, how it kind of combines those different shapes into one, right? So first of all, I would probably put the names of the couple either on one line together or on 2 separate lines. So let's start with one line together. So I'm going to just go in and hit return after these different places. And now I can take out these commas, because if you are playing with text in an invitation like this, you can, and you're breaking things up like this, you can actually take out the punctuation if you need to for aesthetic purposes. All right, so with great pleasure, Olivia and Carlos invite you to join them at the celebration of their marriage. Now there is a period, so this is also a natural place to make another break, right? And then we have the date, and I'm actually going to change this to 7th of April, and I'm going to change this to 2019, like I told you guys, that you can do. So I'm just kind of showing this, and I'm going to put this at 6:30, and you can put in the evening, or you could put PM, okay? And then here is the place, right? And then dinner and dancing to follow. So that kind of breaks it up nicely, right? I would make sure that if you have the date, all of this information, if it was written out text-wise, like you had it before, like down here, I'll show you an example. Let's see, if we had this, the text like this, make sure that it's not broken, like, you know, you want to have 7th day of April, that is the date, right? That's like Saturday the 7th. 2000, here, the year is broken up. You don't want to do that. You would want to have that on its separate line, and then you would want to have the time on its separate line, so that you're not like having half the year on one line and the other half of the year on another line. Same thing with, you know, like the names of the people. You don't want to have, for example, let's say we put this in a larger text. I mean, we put this in the same font as the monogram for repetition, which was what? I forgot what it was called. Acme Gothic, okay? So let's say we put the names in here in Acme Gothic. That's a weird name for it. And I'll do it in this regular, okay? Now it's too long and too big, but I don't want to have his name be part on this line and part on this line. You guys see what I mean? That looks strange. You're breaking up his name. So then you want to put either his name on one line, or you might even want to put the ampersand in between, or the word and, if that's what you have, right? Now what we've also done is we've highlighted and created some emphasis on the names of the couple. That's probably what you want to know the most when you get an invitation, is who is getting married, right? So you want to have that be the top hierarchy, something that people notice first of all. Okay. What is the second thing that you would want to know when you get a wedding invitation? When, exactly. You want to know when it is. So I'm going to take this part right here, the when, and I'm going to emphasize that in some other way. Okay. What are ways to create emphasis? We can use size, we can use contrasting fonts, we can use, okay? So let's say, for example, yeah, you could use a bold italic, you could do different style of this. So let's say the italic kind of throw things off for me a little bit, but the bold will help. Or let's do the semi-bold. So it's not, because I don't want it to be heavier or bigger than the names, okay? You could also use size, and since this size is pretty big as it is, maybe I'll just make the rest of the text a little bit smaller. The rest of the text right here is 12 point, so I can make this a little bit smaller, 11 point for all of this other text. All of this text too. Oh, this is not going to be part of it. That was my extra. Let's say I set all of this text in 11, but you want, if you're using two different sizes, oh my gosh, this is becoming annoying. Stay open. If you're using two different sizes, you want them to be at least 2 point different, because right now it almost just looks like a mistake, right? And also, that moved up there. You want to have at least 2 or 3 points difference. So I'm going to actually put this up to 14 point, which also makes it so that it doesn't fit into my box here. What can I do about that? Well, I can make my box bigger if I want to, or I can make a line break and put the time on another line if I want to. And I think also at this point, I think I'm even going to make this even a little bit bigger, because the other text is starting to kind of interfere. I think it could be quite a bit bigger. Okay. All right. And then we have this break needed to be down there, dinner and dancing to follow. Okay. So now we have used some sizes to emphasize the more important things. We've used some contrasting fonts. How about spacing? Okay, all of this stuff is pretty close together, and if we use a little bit of space, even you can either use a return to space things, you know, even space the place. No, let's see, dinner and dancing to follow. That's kind of an afterthought. Let me space that down a little bit. Now the text is being broken up even more, right? We have with great pleasure, we have Olivia and Carlos, and this talking about the celebration of their marriage, the date and the place. Those are kind of together. If you want to just move it a little bit, you can always use the tracking. Let's open up our character panel right here, because that will be nicer to use. You can always use the leading right here to add a little bit of space and move that down just a little bit more if you want to. If you're using this manually, it's going to add space on top of the line that you have highlighted. So if you want to, you know, make little tiny changes there, you can do it there, and you can make it, you know, be a little bit more detailed than just doing an actual return. Okay. We can also use, you can also add some tracking one thing that tracking does is kind of adds elegance to a text. But just be careful not to add too many different things so it looks kind of crazy. But just see what happens here if we add a lot of tracking to this. It kind of starts looking a little bit more open and elegant, right? And you might want to just do that to all of the text if you're doing it and not just to one line. So let's see. Let's actually just go to 50, and I'm going to add that to all of this text. And you'll see that it kind of starts looking a little bit more elegant, doesn't it? A little bit more formal, fancy, when the letters have a little bit more space around them. All right, so Deborah is mentioning centering the names and the ampersand. Okay, I think that is a good idea, especially because this monogram is centered, right, on the page. And if you have, that's one way, you know, sometimes people go like, how do I know which way, you know, what alignment to pick? And I would say, depending on how you align it on the page, that type of alignment would also work for your text, okay? So if you're planning on aligning things at the center of the page, which we've kind of done here, right? The text box is in the center of the page and the monogram is, then it would feel a lot more consistent and you would be using the principle of repetition if you also center align the text. Center aligning the text also gives it kind of a more formal feel. Yeah, and if you look at the examples that we had in here, you can kind of see that the, oh, did we not have the benchmarks open? This one here, you can see it's centered, feels a little bit more formal. The casual one is, has actually an unusual right alignment, and it's also horizontal, which is a little more casual feeling. And the reason it is right aligned is to kind of give space for the monogram over here on the left side. And the ragged alignment right here just kind of gives it an interesting shape, negative shape around the monogram. Okay, so here we go. Now we've kind of created, pretty simply, but we've created an invitation that has all of the techniques used. Notice that before we had marriage was just on a line by itself like a widow. That's usually something you would avoid, but here in this context, it's not too bad to have a little extra emphasis on the word marriage. So you could keep that, or you could look at it like it is now. It has their marriage, but I just think it feels a little bit weird to have the word of right here and then their marriage. I'm actually going to go in here and put of their marriage on one line, because that just kind of makes more sense when you're reading this. Invite them to join them at the celebration of their marriage. Or you could even maybe do, you know, this if you wanted to, or this if you wanted to, but you want to, you know, you want to think about where the different breaks in the text goes so that it kind of feels like you're taking a pause at the in a nice spot in the text, and it makes sense. Okay, and we've used 2 different fonts, we've used 2 different sizes, so we haven't used too many different fonts and sizes and things like that. Okay. Let's see. All right, color, okay? That would be another thing that you can add to this if you want to. So thinking about, you know, the theme, it's an ocean theme, all of that kind of stuff. If you want to put a background color on here, you can kind of automatically create a frame that way as well. I would recommend that you, depending on how good you are at eyeballing things, that you do view and show rulers so that you can pull out a guide and make sure that you're margins are exactly the same, right? Feel like I eyeballed that pretty good, but you want to make sure you do that. And then this background color, black, of course, is not a good one. What do you think would be a good one for a Caribbean wedding? Yeah, some kind of blue or green, oceany color. Some kind of medium blue color. That little bright. Like something like that? You guys like that one? A little more this way? That looks pretty Caribbean, right? Okay, so I'm going to move that to the back. Shift Command and brackets, move it to the back, or you can do Object, Arrange, and move to the back. Okay, so now it's added a little bit more color, right? Kind of interesting color. One thing that you want to think about when you're adding color, though, is you want to be really careful. Like, say, for example, I wanted to add color to the text as well, or the monogram, for example. And I'm thinking, oh, blue and green, that's really Caribbean, or maybe yellow, okay? I pick a yellow color here. These two colors are pretty close in saturation, or like in value. They're both about the same darkness. So they kind of get a little bit vibrating, and they kind of clash a little bit. So they don't feel too comfortable. I would say a really dark color like this that you're having right here, black, would work, but it feels a little harsh, maybe. White actually is a pretty good contrast. Many times people don't think that, but look how well the white shows up on this blue background. But it's probably because it's you know, pretty thick lines. Let's see what happens if we put all the text in white. Not too bad. Some of this thinner lines become a little bit hard to read. So maybe we want to do a dark color after all, but something that feels a little softer than the black. How about we do a darker blue? Okay. That kind of softens it up a little bit, but it still has a good contrast, right? Dark color against this kind of lighter blue color. And the monogram, you could put that in blue as well, or we can also keep it in white to repeat the border, make the border kind of feel like it belongs with the rest of the border is kind of part of the design. And if you wanted to put like a simple stroke on this box, you could do that too. Maybe you do that in that same dark blue color. You want to make sure that's all the same dark blue now. Whenever you do a stroke, I always recommend that you don't do the default of 1, you know, have it kind of feel maybe the same as the thickness of the text. Let me take off those so that it kind of feels like it's about the same thickness as this. Again, the principle of repetition. All right, so that adds a little bit of detail. You guys think it's nice? Okay, not too bad, right? Okay, so just a few simple steps and elements to keep in mind when you are doing this. Create some line breaks, use some contrasting font, use some different sizes. I would not do more than 3 sizes. In our example right here, we kind of have 3 sizes because this font is in one size, most of the body is in another size, and then we had the date a little bit larger. Okay. Yeah, yep, and hopefully you guys will spend more than half an hour on it, right? So that you guys can probably up it a little bit from here. Okay. So in my demonstrations, I kind of just tend to do the simplest approach possible. All right. Okay. So let's see here. Remember the spacing and the color. Okay. A few things to be especially aware of. You want to combine two fonts. If you want to learn more about that than what I've already talked about in here, In week 2's pre-recorded lecture at 1:34 minutes in, 1 hour, sorry, 1 hour and 34 minutes in is where I go over combining 2 fonts. If you want to do the if you want to check out the demo on organizing text, creating line breaks, and creating hierarchy, which we already actually did here, that is in week's 3 pre-recorded lecture at 1 hour, 33 minutes. Think about your composition. Remember, type should be center stage. Then some finishing details, small caps, superscript, and hanging punctuation. Those things I would really like you to add to your text. And especially if you are using things like Saturday the 7th and PM, you will know that there are some details right here where you would probably use superscript on TH. And let's see here. I think it's in the character panel. Didn't we have that open? What happened to it? All right. Here is superscript right here. And if I click that, see how it does the little TH up here? That's kind of the classic way to do that. Same thing for AM and PM. The classic, classic traditional way to do that is by using small caps, and that you can find right here too in the character panel. And sometimes you don't even want to do a space between it then, or maybe you do. Okay, so those little details, adding that to it is a nice approach. And again, I go over that at 1 hour 47 minutes in week 3's recording. And there is that other demonstration of creating a monogram in week's 3 pre-recorded session at 1 hour 52 minutes. Okay, so these are places that you can go back and look more at that. A few don'ts and do's that I would just keep in mind that when you're looking at your final piece, maybe go over this list and make sure that you haven't, again, done any of the faux pas. You don't want to combine 2 script fonts. That's something that I see sometimes. You don't want to combine 2 decorative fonts. You want to have one that is the lead font, and the other font needs to be simpler. A rule of thumb is kind of like the more extravagant the lead font, the more simple the supporting font or the secondary font. Okay? Don't add decorative elements. Don't use black text on a saturated color background. And in other words, when you, if we go back here and you have a dark text, or you keeping with that black. Let's say you had a pretty dark color in here. See how hard it is to read some of that text with a dark colored background? So then white text actually shows up a lot easier. Hi, Alexis. And what other kind of don'ts? Don't break names and dates and times, right? We talked about that. And beware of overly decorating. Keeping things simple is going to make people notice the beautiful fonts that you've chosen much better. Some do's: only have 1 star font, like I talked about. Leave even margin space, right? Yeah, keep things simple, right? We have that acronym, KISS. Keep things simple, sweetheart, or whatever else you want to maybe call it. Put out some guides so that your margin space is even. Use your alignment tools to make sure that things are centered. You have alignment tools up here. You can center these 2 together. Looks like they weren't centered all the way. And you can make sure that these are centered to the artboard as well. Okay, so now everything is centered nicely there. Break the lines in logical places. We talked about that. Place emphasis on the names. Use one serif and one sans serif when you are combining fonts, or like a script and a classic. I go over a lot more of that in the pre-recorded lecture. Superscript and small caps for dates and times. And think about balancing your design. It doesn't have to be centered to be balanced, but you have to have things even. Like, for example, if we look at that example again, because we have the monogram here and the text here, even though it's asymmetrical, it's still balanced, right? One here and one there. Oh my goodness. Alexis, they're having tornado warnings in Kansas. I hope everybody stays safe. So, no, you're fine. Thank you, Alexis, for letting us know. Okay. Oh my goodness. That's pretty scary. And if anybody has weather issues that are delaying you, I will always, you know, work with you on deadlines because of that. So, all right. Okay, so I think that kind of, you know, make sure that you take note of the examples when you're doing your research. Take a look and see what people have done here. You can see here, scripty font. You know, you can learn from the, you know, I don't mind if you kind of formulate your design from some of the things that you've seen in your research. That's a good way to learn things. That's a good way to practice some of this font combination, okay? This one here is kind of interesting too, where they've used, you know, they use two fonts, but no, there's actually three, I think, because that one is a sans serif. And then they have a scripty right here for the reception and the and. But, you know, take a look at some of these examples and take some of these ideas and use them in your design. That's perfectly all right. That's what research is for, okay? So keep that in mind. If for some reason you wanted to do a horizontal design instead, you can use different types of alignments, either left or right alignment. What I usually recommend is, you know, kind of like this example right here shows us. I do have two browsers open, that's why I'm confused. Notice that this piece of text is over on the right side of the page. And so that's why it's right aligned, because it's lining up on the right side of the page. If I had it over here on the left side of the page, I would left align it. So the positioning of the text on the page can give you a hint of what alignment is going to work. If it's positioned to the right, right align. If it's positioned to the left, left align. If it's positioned in the center, center align, right? Does that make sense? So, all right. So we are going to have a critique of all of the designs next week, and we're going to go over them. And hopefully by looking at all of these different designs that you guys have made, we're going to learn a lot. We're going to see a lot of examples. We're going to see some things that work and some things that don't work. We're going to talk about how to solve the problems that we see, and take hints from the good things that we see. And you guys are going to get a chance during our last week to make revisions on your invitations if you want to. Okay? So now you would just go ahead, save this, of course, with your name, all of that stuff. Three, and I'm just going to put my initials to make this quick. We'll save that original file, And then you want to save a PDF, and that's what you're going to submit. So save as if you're in Illustrator, export if you're in InDesign, and just make sure, you know, deselect that part, the preserve editing capabilities. I always check the view PDF so I can see what it looks like. Make sure there's no marks and bleeds chosen because that's not going to look very nice in your presentation. And then save that. And there we go. There is the finished invitation. Okay, any questions? Oh my goodness, I hope your grandma will be safe, Deborah. All right, okay, we'll have fun with this and then tune back in on Thursday. I will go over the assessment a little bit more, show you maybe a little bit more about pull quotes and, you know, a few tricks that you can use in InDesign to make things look good. Okay. All right. Okay, so I think that's it. We're gonna multi-sessions Thursday from 5 to 7. That's when I'll do the assessment demonstration, but then I'm also here Friday from 10 to 12 if you have questions. Okay. All right. Okay, I think that's it then. And let me know if you have any questions about things. DJ can help you in the Student Success Center, but I can also meet with you in Zoom. Hopefully, you know, we can find some time when we're both available. So, okay. All right, good luck. I look forward to seeing all these invitations.